During the last month or so, a game that has consistently been mentioned on our channel in terms of people's comments on various videos is that of Balatro. It's not a game that we covered at the time as we had other things going on, but the number of times it was mentioned did make me curious until I bought it myself to see what all the fuss was about. Having played it for a good few hours now, it's time to give this game a review on SwitchUp. But does it stack up to the hype, or does it tumble down like a house of cards? Well, let's find out. So in terms of the basic mechanics of Balatro, I had heard it was a deck builder, and technically this is true. But what really drew me to it once I looked into it is the fact that it's essentially a game of poker with that deck building element and a heavy slice of all the good things that roguelites can bring to a game thrown in for good measure. Let's start right at the beginning then, because there is quite a bit to get your head around, and the basic aim is to get through 8 antes or rounds against a particular opponent in order to win. Each of these antes has 3 different sections. You have the small blind, the big blind, and then a game against a boss. And in order to win these, you must reach a certain amount of chips, which are mentioned before you start and displayed in the left hand corner of the screen as you play. You will be dealt a hand of cards with a set amount of hands per game in order to hit the aforementioned number of chips, and you can then lay these cards down in order to make hands as per regular poker. Each card you lay is worth a certain amount of chips. The most basic way of working this out is the number that is shown on the card being how many you get, or a picture card being worth 10. However, the blue box on the left hand side of the screen is the number of chips at any one time you are laying onto the table. The box on the right hand side that it's multiplied by is just that, the multiplier, and this takes into account the actual hand you are laying. For example, if you lay a flush, you'll get a set number of chips plus the ones for the value of each card, and these will then be multiplied by 4. A pair, for example, would see that number of chips multiplied by 2. You then have that set number of hands per game to try and reach the amount mentioned in order to win and move on. However, that's this game at its most basic, and it moves way past that in terms of its mechanics as you start to introduce buffs that will allow you to increase the number of chips and multipliers you can use, pushing that score up and allowing you to move through past each ante. The quickest way to do this is by the joker cards that you can get. Now, every time you do win one of those rounds, you are taken to a shop. You earn money for winning rounds, and how you earn money is a big part of this game. You'll want to consistently be earning passive money if you can to try and get the best cards when they come up. These joker cards all have a passive ability linked to them, and being passive, this will apply whenever you meet a certain criteria. So it could be, for example, that every time you lay a diamond card, you get a +4 multiplier on top of anything that's on the table as it already stands, meaning that that flush I mentioned earlier could potentially have the multiplier of 4 that you get for a flush, plus 5 times 4 more if every card in there was a diamond. There are a large number of these joker cards as you go, and not all of them are as simple as the one I just gave you. Some may well have strengths, but they may have some drawbacks too, and it's about measuring up whether they're worth taking. You can only have 5 joker cards at a time as standard, so you'll need to really think about the cards you have as you move on through the game, and what these allow you to do is to start really building your run into a way that you want to play. It could be that you go for joker cards that really start to boost pairs, as this is the easiest hand to lay in the game, and start to boost the chips and the multiplier potentially by those joker cards you get. It could be that that card offers you a bonus if you only lay 3 cards, therefore not being particularly useful if you are chasing straights or flushes, but being very useful if you are chasing lower hands such as 3 of a kind. It's a very interesting and clever mechanic, and it doesn't stop there, because on top of the joker cards, you also have consumable cards which you will be able to pick up in packs again at the end of each run from that shop. These include celestial cards that will boost a particular type of hand, or opportunities to add completely different, almost buffed versions of your standard cards to your deck, meaning that you don't have the traditional 52 cards anymore and instead have more, with some of these having particular powers. Very good if you are in a pinch on a boss battle, for example, and you really need to boost a hand in order to try and get towards that score. As well as this, you have vouchers that you can buy. Now, there's one of these available per ante, offering things such as an extra hand to deal with, or extending the stock of the shop to 3 items per time, and these are permanent across that particular run. As well as this, you also have the idea of skipping a particular blind. So as I said, you have small, big and boss To make up one ante, you could skip, say, the small blind, moving you straight onto the big blind, obviously meaning you forego any money you would have earned and can't go to the shop after that round, instead receiving some sort of benefit or perk. And it's all about weighing up whether that perk is worth it. For example, I got offered that on my next go at the shop, everything would be free, meaning that as long as I then moved on from the small and beat the big, that next trip to the shop would be very worthwhile. Each of the boss battles that you take part in will see the boss having a particular skill of their own, which could debuff yours, and this sometimes led to my only real negative about the game. Some of these skills that the bosses had were so specific they could completely nerf you even when you're on a great run, leaving you almost powerless against them. Now there are ways around this, don't get me wrong, but one boss for example only lets you play the same hand every time you go against him. So whatever you lay in that first round, you'll have to lay against him every single time. Obviously, if the RNG works against you and you don't get the cards to do this, there's nothing really you can do by this point and the run will be over. This is where that roguelite nature obviously comes in, but it's not like an action roguelite where you can fight your way out despite being underpowered. Sometimes in this game I felt like I reached a completely dead end with the cards or perks I had available at that time. At the end of a run, if you do get a game over, you will go back to the start, but progress in terms of how many items you bought or any landmarks you reach will then see things unlocked, such as being able to pick different decks of cards. For example, it may be that one deck allows you an extra discard, meaning that you can get rid of cards you don't want in exchange for others, or you could have an extra hand of cards to play per blind to try and achieve that number you need. Gameplay in this is absolutely fantastic. It's hard to put into words, and I do appreciate a lot of this review has almost been like a walkthrough of how to play, but I do think that's important if you really want to get a grip of exactly what it is you're buying. The fact that the RNG nature of it can affect you even more in this game than some other roguelites can work against it at times, but even that's a minor complaint, and gameplay gets 19 out of 20. Controls are absolutely spot on, and they include touchscreen for when playing in handheld. They get the full 20 out of 20. Now in terms of the visuals, as you can see, there is a very simple look to this game, but to be honest that's exactly what it needs to be. You can play with a CRT filter on if you wish, and it is on there by default, although I did remove this after a while, not because there's anything wrong with it, but I did like the nice crisp and clean nature of having it without. Whilst nothing it does is earth-shattering, it doesn't need to be honest. What it does need to get correct, and it gets spot on, is its UI, with it being nice and clean, not overly crowded, and giving you all the information you need at a glance. The backgrounds change as you move on to each new level, which is a nice touch, and I did like the variation in style of each of the Joker cards. In terms of the audio, the main musical loop that's used is absolutely fine, and it actually does help to relax you as you play. It's actually quite a relaxing game, surprisingly so at times, and the music is definitely a big part of that. I will say that the loop is very short, however, I never found it annoying at all, which can be the case when you do have a short loop in a game, so credit must be given for that. The sound effects are also quite nice, with the chink that it makes whenever you have a multiplier being one of those distinctive sound effects that games seem to find sometimes, a bit like the stud collecting in the Lego games, or the sound of the XP shooting towards your character in Vampire Survivors. Certain sounds just have that satisfying onomatopoeic feel to them that fits exactly what they're doing in game. Visuals are fairly basic, but they do exactly what they need to do, and what it needs to do the most is keep that UI clean. It does exactly this. They get 17 out of 20. Audio helps to keep the stress levels down as you attempt that successful run, despite being on quite a short loop, and it gets 16 out of 20. Balatro costs £12.79 and regional equivalents are on your screen now. Now there is a finite end in beating the 8 antes, and I've seen the average given to achieve this be about 7 to 8 hours. Well, I've easily put this much time in so far already, and I've got to ante 7 out of 8 being my best run so far, so it definitely depends on your skill level and a bit of luck along the way. Aside from this though, there is of course the fact that you can go on to get all of the collectibles, filling out those collections and seeing everything the game has to offer. You're talking a good 90 to 100 hours for sure. And then of course you have the fact that if you're anything like me, even if you do beat the game, you may just want to play the occasional run because it has that addictive quality. For me this is the perfect price, therefore it gets the perfect score, value gets 20 out of 20. To conclude, Balatro is a game that I'd heard mentioned many times, as I said right at the start, and was starting to wonder what the fuss was all about. Well, having played it for a good few hours now, I can say with some certainty that I get it 100%. It's not my usual roguelite, something like Vampire Survivors, The Binding of Isaac, where the adrenaline is pumping and even if you do get a bad run, you still have that puncher's chance. This is a bit different, but it's equally as addictive and just as fantastic. I wouldn't say this was a game for everyone. I do think there are people that it just won't click with, but hopefully this review, in not just giving you my thoughts, but trying to give you an overview of how it plays, will allow you to know if you are one of the people that it will click with. I certainly was, and this for me, so far, might just be my game of the year. Balatro gets a SwitchUp score of 92%. Thank you everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Please do remember to leave a like if you did. Thank you to those people that did mention this game in the comment sections, or it may have been one that passed me by completely. And don't forget, if you are looking to pick this game up, or any other game for that matter, you can get your eShop cards over at our website, switchup.gg, and doing so will get you 5% of your purchase price back in cashback, which you can then use against a future purchase. There are also some links down there to some other places such as PlayAsia, Red Art Games, and Premium Edition Games, where you can pick up physical copies of a variety of Switch games, and there are some codes down there which, if you use in conjunction with the link, will get you a nice discount. A quick thank you to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.